Chapter 10, Techniques of Healing and Remembering. The beginning of Krishna consciousness and devotional service is healing. In Sanskrit called Shravanam. So you can set Kirtan programs, if you have Shravanam programs, do that first, and then you can do Kirtan programs before that. All people should be given the chance to come and join devotional parties so that they may hear. This healing is very important for progressing Krishna consciousness. When one links his ears to get aural reception to the transcendental vibration, he can quickly become purified and cleansed in the heart. Lord Chaitanya has affirmed that this healing is very important. It cleanses the heart of the contaminated soul so that he becomes quickly qualified for devotional service and understand Krishna consciousness. We should read that again in case you didn't hear it. Lord Chaitanya has affirmed that this healing is very important. It cleanses the heart of the contaminated soul so that it quickly becomes qualified to enter into devotional service and understand Krishna consciousness. So there you have it. The purpose of this hearing is to quickly purify the consciousness of the conditioned soul. So whenever we feel more contaminated and more in Maya, then we do more hearing. Sometimes we think the opposite. We think, oh, things are so troublesome, let me give up Krishna consciousness. No. Things are so troublesome because of lack of Krishna consciousness. So we have to do more Krishna consciousness. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 10, entitled Prahlad, the Best Among Exalted Devotees, text number 10. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam. Purushaya Mahatmane. Purushaya Mahatmane. Haraye Adbhuta Singhaya. Haraye Adbhuta Singhaya. Brahmane Paramatmane. Brahmane Paramatmane. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam. Purushaya Mahatmane. Haraye Adbhuta Singhaya. Brahmane Paramatmane. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam. Purushaya Mahatmane. Haraye Adbhuta Singhaya. Brahmane Paramatmane. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam. Purushaya Mahatmane. Haraye Adbhuta Singhaya. Brahmane Paramatmane. Please. Mataji? Om, O my Lord, O personality of Godhead, Namaha, of my respectful obeisances, Bhagavate, unto the Supreme Person, Tubyam, unto you, Krishna, unto the Supreme Person, Mahatmane, unto the Supreme Soul, or the Super Soul, Haraye, unto the Lord, who vanquishes all the miseries of devotees, Advaita Singhaya, unto your wonderful lion-like form, Singhadev, Brahmane, unto the Supreme Brahman, Parama Atmane, unto the Supreme Soul. Translation, my Lord, full of six opulences, O Supreme Soul, killer of all miseries, O Supreme Person in the form of a wonderful lion and man, my respectful obeisances unto you. Please repeat, O my Lord, full of six opulences, O Supreme Person, O Supreme Soul, killer of all miseries, O Supreme Person in the form of a wonderful lion and man, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. In the previous verse, Prahlad Maharaj has explained that what he can achieve the platform of Bhagavatam, being a supreme person. But this does not mean that the devotee loses his position as a servant, a pure servant of the Lord, although as opulent as the Lord, is still meant to offer respectful obeisances to the Lord in service. Prahlad Maharaj was engaged in pacifying the Lord, and therefore he did not consider himself to equal to the Lord. He defined his position as a servant and offered respectful obeisances unto the Lord. Om Gyanantimarandasya Gyananjana Slakaya Chakshurmilitamina Tasmai Shigurave Namaha Vakam Karoti Vachalam Namlagate Grimnya Patamham Karnam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Sivasadi Gora Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Krishna O my Lord, full of six opulences, O Supreme Person, O Supreme Soul, killer of all miseries, O Supreme Person in the form of a wonderful lion and man, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So here, Srila Prabhupada was talking about Prahlad Maharaj was engaged in pacifying the Lord. So, for example, if we just pop back to the previous chapter, we could see, for example, my dear Lord, O infallible one, my position is like that of a person who has many wives, all trying to attract him in their own way. For example, the tongue is attracted to palatable dishes, genitals to sex with attractive women, and the sense of touch to contact with soft things. The belly, although filled, still wants to eat more, and the ear, not attempting to hear about you, is generally attracted to cinema songs. Now, of course, they didn't have cinemas back in those days. So, we'll come to that in a second. The sense of smell is attracted to yet another side. The restless eyes are attracted to scenes of sense gratification, and the active senses are attracted elsewhere. In this way, I'm certainly embarrassed. Yeah. Yeah, so the term given is Shravanam Kutash Chit, the ear for hearing some sweet music from some other side. So, in other words, Prabhupada's translating it as cinema songs just for modern reference. But of course, it's not that they had cinemas back in the days of Prahlad Maharaj, and he was, we shouldn't be taken verbatim. We have to see the context here that Prabhupada is preaching to the devotees here who are attached to mundane music, for example. And this was, it's not that mundane music only started in Kali Yuga. Even Narada Muni, wasn't it? He was singing some mundane love songs before he was Narada Muni. And on account of that, he didn't respect some sages properly. He got some curse, but when the sages curse, then there's some benediction. Just like Nalukivera and Manigriva, right? We just finished Kartik, and those two persons are mentioned here. Now, because of their failure to respect the great sage Narad, then he compassionately cursed them so that they take birth as two big trees. Now, they were sporting in the river naked, and they had no shame because they were so intoxicated, they had no shame. So one who wants to stand naked, then they can get this gift from the law of nature. They can stand naked as a tree for all to see. Oh, you want to be naked? There you go, stand as a tree like this. How long you want to be a tree for? So you like it, this is what you want, you happy with it? Like they say in Buddhism, you have to be careful what you want because you might get it. So therefore, sometimes we hear the benedictions of devotees as may your best desires be fulfilled. So not just like someone comes for a benediction, we say, yes, may you have a nice wage packet and a nice car and a nice house, because the devotees give benedictions like that. They don't give benedictions like that because they have something much better to give. Even Vyasadeva, at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear that Vyasadeva has been somewhat chastised by Narad Muni, isn't he? Does anyone remember what's going on there? The spiritual master of Vyasadeva is? Right. And what's happening there? Anyone remember? Nishan? Yeah, your hand's up when you go. It's hard to hear you above the aeroplanes here. That one's not so bad. Yeah, so basically he was saying that he omitted to give the essence. So, and this is actually, it's not that, Vyasadeva wasn't qualified, but this is also the pastimes of the Lord. It's like, okay, you've given all this so people can gradually elevate over periods of births, but you haven't given the essence, which is immediately going to elevate them to the spiritual platform, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful narrations of the personality of Godhead. This beautiful Bhagavatam has arisen like the sun, right? And so we see this in the beginning of Bhagavatam, is that there? Janmadyasya Yadhvanvayadi Tarachash Charteshu Bhagyaswarat. So the first shloka of the Bhagavatam, it's quite a long purport there, we won't go through the whole thing. Tini Brahma Hridaya Dikavi Mayanti Yatsura, Teju Vari Mridam Yatavi Namayo Yatra Trishar Gomrisha, Damna Swina Sada Nirashtakukam Satyam Param Dimahi. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, O Son of Vasudev, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living entity. By him, the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion as one is bewildered by the illusory representation of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of three modes of material nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So what an opening verse, eh? That's what you'd call in Scotland a stormer. You know, the Vyasadeva just storms in there and just makes it clear. This is who we're talking about now. So we spoke about all these peripheral things where you can get some kind of material benefit. You can gradually elevate yourself in some way or another. But really, the thing is that we are all eternal servants of the Lord, and this is the Supreme Lord who he is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him. So this is the meaning of independence, that there's nothing beyond. He's not answerable to anyone. It's not like, of course, he's maybe answerable to Mother Yashoda, but that's a different thing. That's Leela. But Prabhupada was very emphatic that before the devotees get so absorbed in Leela, they should understand the Lord. When we do deity worship, he said that devotees have to become sufficiently purified by this deity worship. So whether you're on the altar or whether you're serving in some other capacity, it's all the deities are the center of the devotee community. And we should worship them with awe and reverence. Prabhupada was not in favor of this jumping. What does he say? Big monkey, big jumping, sail on call. No, big monkey, big belly, sail on jumping, melancholy. You've heard this one? Yeah. So you know what Ceylon is? The country of Ceylon is known as Sri Lanka. And so big monkey. Hanuman is a big monkey, and he can jump to Lanka, but we can't do that. So what he's saying is, unless you're qualified, big monkey, big belly, our senses aren't even controlled, but we want to jump to something which is beyond us. So Prabhupada is saying, first of all, become sufficiently purified and understand the supremacy of the Supreme Lord. That's why we have to understand systematically the process of understanding who Krishna is. If there was, for example, so sail on jumping, melancholy. Melancholy means, it's sad, it's not going to happen, you're not going to be able to do what Hanuman did. So when we take darshan of the deities, it's explained that we should begin from looking at the feet and then up to the face. And this is how we should read the Bhagavatam. We should start on the first canto. First we read Bhagavad Gita, ABC, and then we read first canto. And sometimes it's even described that we should read the first canto like 3 times before we even go to the second canto. When I read the first canto and someone told, I was coming at the end of it, and I was thinking, oh good, now we're going to the second canto, and someone said, no, you should read it 3 times. And I thought, oh drat. I was looking forward. But then when I read it 3 times, I thought, wow, this is actually really good, because you're creating a solid foundation so that everything else you're learning after that is in reference to this solid foundation. So this is so much important. Nectar of instruction, nectar of devotion, Bhagavad Gita. These books we can't read often enough. It's not like we read it once like a novel and then, okay, I've read that one, what's next? And then finally we read all the books and we think, okay, I'm bored now, what next? No, these books have got unlimited. For example, even the first verse of the Shikshastakam, does anybody know that verse? Vacha Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udara Pasta Vegam, Tan Veganyo, Veshaheta Dira, Shishastam, Sham, whatever it is. I forget the last line. So what's the English? Anyone remember that? So basically it comes to, I was just asking because I can't remember it. Not trying to put you on the spot. make disciples all over the world. That's right. So if you read the purport, then Prabhupada explains what it means to control the senses. And one thing he says that one shouldn't run here and there simply after the pleasure of the tongue, belly, and genitals. So unless one comes to that point, then, and it's systematically, and then Srila Rupa Goswami explains the things which are favorable for pure devotional service, the types of association which are to be accepted, that which is to be rejected, the things which are favorable for advancing Krishna consciousness, the things that are detrimental for advancing. So when we read all these things, then we're actually we're creating a safe environment for us to cultivate this Bhakti Lata Bij. If we put so much effort into making a nice greenhouse so we can grow something in Scotland in the winter, and we put heating in there, and we put lights, and we put a nice polythene ceiling, and all sorts of things which we do there to make it favourable, but we don't weed it. And funnily enough, by nature's arrangement, the weeds seem to take easier than the flowers or the plants you're trying to grow. So if you don't weed it, then you're neglecting that, isn't it? We do so much work. So we make quite an effort to give up so many things to come to Krishna consciousness. So therefore, all this preparation work, leaving things behind, starting dressing a different way, which most people in the material world wouldn't be seen dead going about in a bed sheet, or wearing a certain paint on their head. You're making quite a statement, and it's quite a cultural change. But it's more than culture; it's actually a spiritual culture. But that spiritual culture is not simply the externals; it's the internals. The externals aren't as important, but it's not that they're unimportant either. When you see a policeman on the street, you know he's a policeman because he's got a uniform on, isn't it? And then depending who you are, you might go and seek their services or you might avoid them. So it's, but a devotee also, you see a devotee and then you can tell who they are. Of course, like we were saying in class the other day, the devotees have got such bad dress sense that even if they're dressed in Western clothes, people can still tell who they are. They stick out a mile. And there's also something about the devotees, if they're practicing devotional service nicely, then people become attracted because the the senses of the conditioned soul. It's like when you meet someone for the first time, your senses are quite heightened in first impressions, and you look back, you can often see that your first impressions were correct because you're much more aware. There was a talk show says that he has a contact who goes around every year and he gets donations from, and the man has a dog, or at least he had, I don't know if he still has, but whenever someone came into the office to do business, if the dog didn't like him, he didn't do business with the person because he went on the dog's sense. He says the animals, they're just as is, they've not got some kind of false ego where it's like, yeah, I don't know if I like the way that guy's dressed, or I don't like the words he's saying. They have a sense which is, they live in the moment, whereas humans are a bit more complicated. And he found that he actually became a very successful businessman. So, of course, I wouldn't necessarily say this is like a principle that everyone should live by, or that we should have a dog here in the temple, and we can get their opinion on things. But the point is that that we have to protect this Bhakti Lata Bij, and therefore, in order, if you want to build something, especially you want to build a very tall building, then you have to have a very strong foundation. If you build something very tall on a foundation which is not solid, then eventually it will collapse. Sometimes this happens in India, isn't it? You see they build these skyscrapers and they've skimped on the cement or they've skipped on the foundations and everyone's getting a backhander out of it. But then skyscrapers are crumbling. People are getting killed on account of this. So there's no limit to how much we can build this foundation. It's not that the foundation becomes unimportant at some time. This is much more, so much more important. And then when there's a strong foundation is there, the foundation is never taken away. It's always kept there so we can build on it steadily. So therefore, reading first canto and then gradually reading the other cantos, and ultimately we come to the 10th canto where we speak about the Lord's pastimes. And by that time, we've come to understand that the Supreme Lord is, as mentioned there, the cause of all causes and completely independent. There's nothing beyond him. So here, the Lord is also known as Haraye, Harayed Bhuta Singhaya. So just like in this, Nishanga Pranams, we say, Tavakara Kamalavarena Kam Adbhuta Shringam, this wonderful form. So it's considered that it was so wonderful that one could not understand. Is it a man? Is it a lion? What is it? So of course when we, or when the artists have to portray this half man, half lion, then they do it to some ability as to their limited conception, having not seen Lord Nrsingadev personally appear. So they give the best description they can, just like when the devotees have to portray Lord Brahma. When Lord Brahma called to meet Krishna in Dwarka, then the doorman said, "Who is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's Lord Brahma." So he went to Krishna, and Krishna sent him back saying, "Ask which Brahma." And he says, "Which?" So he says, "Which Brahma?" He says, "Well, of course, Chaturmukhi Brahma, four-headed Brahma." He says, "Who else?" And then, but this is Krishna's plan to bring the devotee back down to earth, because sometimes we get some ability given by God, and when we have this God-given ability, then suddenly we're the controller, we're the person, we're the doer. So then he allowed him in, and he's seen so many different Brahmas who had many more heads than him. Some had 100, 1,000, because they're controlling bigger universes. And the point I was making is that the ISKCON artists try to portray this Lord Brahma with 1,000 heads. So they've got like this little body with like a whole Christmas tree of heads sitting on their neck, which is just, it's most likely not like that. Because how do you put 1,000,000 heads on one set of shoulders? So we have some limited conception, and therefore we're only able to portray that in a limited way. But this word Adbhuta means wonderful. It fills the devotee full of wonder. This is the nature of the Lord. He is Navayovana, eternally youthful. It's not like, oh yeah, okay, I've seen Krishna, what next? No, it's described that when you look at Krishna, every time you see him, it's like the first time you've seen him, because he's effervescent. Effervescent means that his youth is always blooming. When a flower comes into its bloom, into full bloom, then that's at its peak. And Krishna is always at a peak. So this form of Lord Nrsingadev is specifically there for protecting the devotees. And Prahlad Maharaj was no small devotee. You know, if we were put into a fraction of the circumstances that he was put into, how long would we last before we submit to Hiranyakashipu, get back to school and learn the demonic ways? We can't say. Maybe we'd say now because we know the story. But if we didn't know the story and we were in those situations, you know, so Prahlad Maharaj, he's giving us such great lessons, that he was so absorbed in Krishna that he wasn't absorbed in Krishna for his protection or protection of his body. He was absorbed in Krishna because he was absorbed in Krishna. And as a side benefit, then he was given all protection. So this haraye means that one who takes away or vanquishes all the miseries of devotees. So it comes from hari, who takes away, harate, one who takes away. So in our life, attempting to be a devotee, Shishikontama Prashashikija, then sometimes we experience things have been taken away from us. It might be some position, it might be some respect, it might be a service, or it may be some facility or some ability. But if we understand that this is the mercy of the Lord, Hari, he takes away that which is going to perpetuate our stay in this material world. What's that? Okay, what is the comment? I can't hear you. All right, so why be bothered with it? So when the Lord takes away, then he's taken away to give us something better. Just like the example is given, if the child has some coloured glass, it sees some coloured glass and it thinks, oh, what's that shiny thing? Picks it up and the glass is broken. Like sometimes you get irresponsible people who'll just maybe break a glass bottle or something and the child comes along and plays with the broken glass and it's holding up to the light and it's mesmerized by this new phenomena. But the mother sees the child and thinks, well, this is dangerous. And if I ask the child just to give me that glass, then it might hold on to it tight and cut itself. So let me just, first of all, try to attract it by giving something else and then cleverly take that away. So this is the Lord's position. He's giving us something else and trying to take something away. But our position is we want both. Just like in Vrindavan, you have these bandurs, right? A monkey. Sometimes they'll steal your camera or your phone or your glasses. And then they'll sit on a canopy above the stalls of the shops. And then they'll dangle it down like this. And then the shopkeeper maybe offer some bananas as a trade. They're so smart, they'll trade like that. But sometimes the monkeys are so smart, they'll take the bananas and the glasses. So this is us. We're like cheeky monkeys. We want everything and we want it now. We want to hold on to our material desires and material life, and we want the nectar of Krishna consciousness. But the heart isn't like that. There's not enough room for those. Only one can remain. If we want something else other than Krishna, and Krishna says, okay, you don't need me, I'll step aside and you can fill the void with something else that you want. And this is Krishna. He doesn't force himself on us. But sometimes, as we see, Prabhupada referred to this, that when his family life fell apart and his business was not successful, then it's not that Prabhupada wasn't capable of making successful business. We see how successful he was as a devotee preaching. But that wasn't for him. That wasn't the plan of the Lord for him. So he said, he quoted this verse, that when the Lord looks favorably upon someone, they take everything away. He takes everything away from that person, makes him a most wretched fellow in society. And so that all they have left is the shelter of Krishna. So if we feel like that, if we feel like we have no place in society out there any longer, then that's a blessing of Krishna, that we can't fit in there. Even sometimes we may struggle in devotional service, but what's the alternative? What's the option to go back out there? We already concluded that wasn't something of any value. So we come to that point where we surrender to Krishna, or we're trying to, but still, because we have some residual desires from the material world, and these desires may be for some situation, some object, or for some recognition. It's foolish to think that we have no material desires. Even the great acharyas, they're speaking like this. So they're not taking any chances. They're not thinking, oh, I'm completely free now and I have no problem whatsoever. I can just wander around the material world without being checked in any way. But the devotee doesn't think like that. Like Prabhupada, he was praying that he never falls down. So in this way, he's always protected. So a devotee doesn't take it for granted that they're above Maya. To think like that means that you're in Maya. There was one devotee years ago. He was in a very prominent position, and he challenged Maya. He was becoming so successful, and he challenged Maya, and he didn't last long after that. And I remember some devotees were very concerned when he made that statement. So to make a challenge to Maya means you're already in Maya. And Prabhupada, the proof is that Prabhupada says the problem is the devotees are not sufficiently afraid of Maya. And we shouldn't let it come to the point where we become so offended that someone says we're in Maya. How are we going to progress in devotional service? If someone comes along and says, Prabhu, get up from Mangalarti, you're in Maya line there. I only had 12 hours sleep, Prabhu. So if we're in Maya and the devotee comes along and says that, then that is a blessing. Even if the person's motivation isn't true, then the fact of the matter is, any point in the day, anyone could come along and say, Prabhu, you're in Maya. And you can say, yeah, that's true. I don't know what it is, but it must be true. I'm in the material world. And there was a nice instance where one devotee went to Prabhupada and says, oh, Prabhupada, sometimes I fall into Maya. And Prabhupada says, no, sometimes you fall into Krishna, you're always in Maya. So this is the proper way the devotee should think. Otherwise, we may become falsely proud. So we should always feel somewhat vulnerable in the material world, but this vulnerability will cause us to take shelter of Krishna. This is our impetus. And Prahlad Maharaj, he was very much able to preach like this, of the pitfalls of the material world. He was preaching, as to his classmates, even to his father. And here also we're seeing he's showing the demigods how to approach the Supreme Lord. And the Lord is satisfied. Although the Lord was very angry with Hiranyakashipu, and the demigods daren't go near him, then Prahlad Maharaj had no fear whatsoever. And the demigods understood this, therefore they put Prahlad Maharaj first. So this verse is carrying on from the previous verse where it's mentioned that this platform of Bhagavatva is that the deity, the devotee, he may obtain the same opulence as the Lord, but he always remains in the servant capacity. So therefore this verse, Trinadapi, we say every day, because this is the basis of the service mood. And it's not where it comes to a certain point where we just throw that aside. Everything's done in the mood of service and the humble state of mind. And see, even to the topmost devotees, Krishna is always protecting his devotees from becoming proud. And this is because of Krishna's affection for his devotees. He doesn't want them to become illusioned or to suffer. So Prahlad Maharaj defined his position as a servant and by offering respectful obeisances. So even we see Arjuna during Bhagavad Gita, he understands the position of the Lord through seeing universal form, etc. And then he wants to see the four-armed form of the Lord, and then again the two-armed form of the Lord, because he sees a glimpse into the might of the Lord, which can only be seen by the Lord's revelation. But both the Lord and the devotee prefer to have this relationship, which is more based on when the devotee is able to give up seeing the Lord as Supreme Lord. So just like Mother Yashoda, she's under the influence of a yoga maya so that she can relate to the Lord in the capacity that she likes to do that, and the Lord likes to reciprocate with this desire of the devotee as well. But when she looked into Krishna's mouth, then momentarily she could understand her position as a tiny spirit soul, eternal servant of the Lord. So these revelations to Arjuna, to Mother Yashoda, they're there to show us that despite the fact that these devotees relate to the Lord in one of these rasas, then the Lord is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not that he simply just becomes your buddy. And that the foundational principle is eternal service. And that service may be you become so elevated that Krishna enjoys being chastised by you. But here it's been said very clearly that even despite we may get the same opulences of the Lord, then the underlying principle is always that we are subordinate to the Lord and we remain the servant and he remains the master. That's very clear. Okay, anyone get any comments or questions? Yeah. Yeah. So they're entitled to their opinion, even if they're wrong. So I've heard this too. And on the other hand, if you go with no tilak and Western clothes, they say, why are you going incognito? What are you trying to hide? So you can't please all the people all the time. So just go what you're comfortable. And there is a difference. Now, if we were dividing ourselves from society, you can say, well, I wouldn't be here on the street, would I? I'm here on the street amongst everybody more than you are, because you probably just come into town now and again. I'm here every day. If I was separating myself from society, I'd be living in a cave or in the jungle or the forest or the mountains. But we're not, we're in the city. And you can see this is called being in the world but not of the world. Yeah, so you can say we're, in one sense, we're separate from society because the devotee becomes a non-entity in the material world, isn't it? They have no business in the material world any longer. But because we want to try to give some benefit to the society, then we feel we've benefited something, therefore we come in to mix with the rest of society. We mix with society more than they do. How many people do you meet in a day? Hundreds. How many people do they meet in a day and speak to? You're mixing with society more than they are. So it's not so much a case of dividing. Externally, that may be seen, but then, and it does happen that sometimes people will approach you because of how you look or because of what you represent, whether you wear one clothing or another clothing. But if you're not there, then how can they approach you? So the devotees put themselves there so that they can either approach people or people can approach them. Anyone like to share anything else on that? Or another question?
two things in the heart at once, outside of Krishna, or from the material things that we desire. And the way to get the thing is by hearing these verses in Sanskrit, is it? So can that work as well if you're just reading from the book? Or does it have to be heard from, someone senior?
Well, if we have Bhagavatam class every day, and you're asking a question just now, but if you're just reading yourself, you wouldn't be able to ask a question to someone. So that's why you have Bhagavatam class, so we can ask questions. And the Bhagavatam is nothing but questions and answers, isn't it? So yeah, no, you're right that and it can be someone senior, or it can be any devotee. Prabhupada says that one should seek out the association of a pure devotee or devotee. So it's like sometimes this means he's giving no excuse that someone can't say, oh, well, I can't surrender because I can't find a pure devotee, so therefore I can't surrender. That's me off the hook now. But he says, no, find a pure devotee and surrender, or devotees. So it's just like the devotees who are going out on the street together, often they may be of similar kind of status, if you want to say it like that. But they can share with each other the realizations they have. You go out on book distribution, on the streets, and then you meet with different people, and then later on you discuss with each other who you met, what was said, someone challenged you in some way, and how you were able to overcome it, or maybe you didn't, you were a bit puzzled, and then someone says, oh, I came across this and I said that. So you're just sharing, enlightening one another by always conversing about me, Krishna says. So this is a purification, and we're becoming closer to Krishna by this surrender. If we just try to take to Krishna consciousness on our own, then we won't be able to share, won't be able to get the realizations and answer questions. The whole process is just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he's seen the truth. So this is Krishna's words, Tadvadi Pranapatina, try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. So the spiritual master, you could say, well, he's in the books, I don't necessarily have to speak to anyone else. But in the books, it talks about getting association of devotees. So it's not that we just read the books. And then some people will falsely say, oh, you don't have to read books at all. So we follow what Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, because sometimes people will present something as Bhagavad Gita, but unless we have a sadhu saying, what is the Bhagavad Gita as it is, then how do we know? Just like someone asked me to answer some questions from a translation of Bhagavad Gita, which wasn't Prabhupada's Gita, and when I looked at it, I thought, you can't answer according to this because it's a mistranslation to start with. So the people are getting misguided to begin with, and they're asking questions based on something which is not even a true statement. So I just said, I can answer from Bhagavad Gita as it is, but I can't answer from this book. So they said, yeah, okay, and then I did. Then immediately they thought, oh, that clears it all up. The other one was confusing us. So this is the benefit of hearing in parampara, that there's no grey area. It's quite clear. There's no confusion. Now I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. Then Krishna speaks, and then Arjuna's doubts are all cleared. So this is the importance of maintaining that disciplic succession without changing. And Prabhupada says, my only qualification is I never changed anything. So what he got from his spiritual master, he delivered it without change. And that is the qualification. Where simply the postman doesn't come along, open up your letters and make a few comments and change it and then give it to you and say, okay, this is my version of the letter you were supposed to receive. He just takes it and he gives it. He does that job. So out of humility, then the spiritual master sees him like that, or any devotee. Of course, spiritual master doesn't just mean to say Diksha Guru. It means Shiksha, anyone who's taking that instruction and presenting it as it is without any change. So in this way, we do need the association of devotees. Sometimes, though, if we find that association of devotees is a bit intense, then we have to take it. We have to do what's necessary for us preserving our Krishna consciousness. So we have to look at the long term and do what's the essence of Krishna consciousness is to accept that which is favourable and reject that which is unfavourable. And so that may be different for each individual person, and it may be different for us today than it was last week or next week. You know, whatever we have to do to maintain our Krishna consciousness, we have to accept that. Sometimes people change ashrams because it's favourable for them to change their external situation so that they can continue practicing Krishna consciousness steadily. They may go from brahmachari to grihastha, or from grihastha to vanaprastha, or to sannyas. They change in temporary situations. And even there's occasions where they went from sannyas back to grihastha. And Prabhupada, he gave that stamp of approval because in a young movement, Prabhupada he had enthusiastic young people who were running with the ball. But when they tripped, he said, that's okay, just go back to the defense line again. And just go back to your wife. Because the important thing is devotional service. That trumps any type of ashram, doesn't it? That's the common denominator, devotional service. Okay, I think we better stop here because you're planning to get out, isn't it? Is that okay, or is it, we'll just finish there? ISKCON Gurvinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.